שלום חברים, עכשיו אנחנו נלמד שיעור בתלמוד 10 הספירות עם הרבש. השיעור של הרבש יתחיל בתלמוד 10.
Hello friends, now we're going to study with Rabash. It is part 5
באור פנימי של אות למ"ה.
in a light of item 35,
שלא מתי בכתר. לפני
beginning with
עם הרבש,
Lo Mati in Keter. First, we're going to read item 35 in the words of the Ari, item 35, in part 5 of Das. We must thoroughly explain the meaning of Mati, expanding, and not Mati, not expanding. It is said that in the beginning the light comes in Keter, and all 9 lights are contained in it. Afterwards, it returns to being not Mati, not expanding. When the light that reaches Keter exits it once more, but the 9 other lights remain in Keter, since Keter has the power to tolerate them. In that state, when the light is not Mati, in the Keter extends 9 lights to Chokhmah face to face and places them in Chokhmah. At that time, Chokhmah turns her anterior after receiving the 9 lights and shines to Bina face to face. It is only illumination, but she still does not give her the 7 lights. And now to Rabash's lesson.
Now again, while not Mate in Keter, what does it mean not expanding in Keter, Mate in Keter? The light departed. How did the light depart? Meaning when phase 4 of the male of Keter was refined, as well as phase 3 of the Nukva of Keter, of the Partzuf Ta'amim, the flavor of the tastes. By this we learn that departed the light of the level of Keter of the male and the level of Chokhmah of the Nukva. It looks in this, the Partzuf Ta'amim and Partzuf Keter, those 10 Sefirot of male and female lost the level of Keter in them, and the 10 Sefirot of male were diminished from 4 to 3. It's called into the level of Chokhmah, and the 10 Sefirot of female, that was phase 3 of coarseness, were diminished into the level of Binah, phase 2 of coarseness. That level that was diminished now from 4.3 to 3.2 is no longer attributed to Keter at all, which is 4.3, but to the vessel of Chokhmah. Therefore, the Keter bestows them to the vessels of Chokhmah, as the Ari says. This is considered that she gave to Chokhmah, meaning you could say that this coarseness is already, it's not, it's as if it's considered giving to Chokhmah. There are no places, and it's considered that it's giving to Chokhmah. I kind of depicted a new discernment here, a new phase. If I'm talking about the old vessels, then I say that the Partzuf Ta'amim called Keter now gave a vessel of Chokhmah which remained in Partzuf Galgalta. If I combine them, everything can also be explained this way. Yet, we must understand how the lights are extended from the vessel of Keter to the vessel of Chokhmah. Why not? After all, there is a great distance between the vessels. The vessel of Keter is in coarseness of phase 4, and the vessel of Chokhmah is in courses of phase 3. And it is known that disparity of form separates and distances the spirituals. Thus, how do they touch one another so as to be able to bestow upon each other? We must not be mistaken to say that the vessel of Keter was refined to phase 3 and thus became equal to the vessel of Chokhmah, since it is known that no refinement is done in the vessels whatsoever. And the whole issue of the above said refinement relates only to the screen in the vessels and not the vessels themselves. What is he asking? He's asking how the vessel of Keter can give to the vessel of Chokhmah, where there needs to be equivalence between the giver and the receiver, he says. If the Kli of Keter is from phase 4 of coarseness, meaning it is used for phase 4 of coarseness, and the vessel of Chokhmah has only phase 3 of coarseness, how can the upper one give the lower one? Therefore, because let's say that to say that it was refined, there's no refinement in the vessels. All that was refined is only the screens. Let's see what he says here. We must not be mistaken to say, like you would like to say, that the vessels of Keter were refined to phase 3 and thus became equal to the vessel of Chokhmah. Due to the screen, we should say this way. And when he wants to say, he says no. Let's see why. Since it is known that no refinement is done in the vessels whatsoever. And the whole issue of the above said refinement relates only to the screen in the vessels, and not to the vessels themselves. If so, he says, not the vessels themselves. Now, in the screen, we understand where there's a change. Now, we want to understand what he's saying and what he intends to talk about in the vessels. Let's see what he says. Why Galgalta? Okay. However, we must remember that the Ari explained above in item 15 and in inner light that it was explained that when the light departs from the vessel by itself again, when the vessel departs from the vessel itself turns its anterior downward and its posterior upward. The anterior of the vessel becomes the posterior, and the posterior becomes the anterior, and examine it there. Here, however, after the light that belongs to the vessel of Keter departed, because the phase 4 of the male and phase 3 of female have departed, and a coupling was made on phase 3 of the male and phase 2 of the female. At that time, the vessel of Keter turns its anterior downward, which is the great coarseness that is in it. Its entire anterior and importance have now become very bad. And the posterior, meaning the refined side of it, has become the most important. Now you can see that after the vessel of Keter turned its posterior upward, it equalized with the vessel of Chokhmah. Since the whole disparity of form that was in vessel of Keter is the great coarseness of phase 4 and phase 3 in it. For this is all the merit over the vessel of Chokhmah. Now, all that coarseness has been revoked from it because of the turning of its anterior downward, and thus it is now considered equalized in form with Chokhmah. What's the question? And what's the answer? He asks, above we need to understand how lights extend from the vessel of Keter to the vessel of Chokhmah. That's 4-3 and that one's 4-3-2. There's no equivalence. Refinement? Refinement was in the screen, but the vessel is hers, meaning there's no connection to this with the vessel of 3-2. He comes and he says this way. Correct. We learned above in part 4, when the light departs, we said that the light departs from the vessel of Malchut there, which is the Partzuf Tamim. So, there we learn this way, that phase 4 was refined from the Kli of Malchut. So the light illuminates now through the posterior. We learned about the returning of reflected light. You remember? We learned this way. The vessel Malchut had coarseness of phase 4. That was refined. The light departed from it. So he says now, phase 3. 4 is considered Malchut of its internal phase, and 3 is considered the posterior. Now, when the light of phase 3 of Chokhmah illuminates, it turns its face downwards. 4 is now lower in importance in her, and 3 is higher in importance in her. Why? Because by 3 now the light illuminates. Then, when the light departs also from the vessel of 3, from Zeranpin, it illuminates now in the vessel of Binah. So we learned that the Kli of Zeranpin was now also facing downwards, meaning to the vessel of 3, the anterior, and what's her posterior? 2. So she turns downwards, and 3 now becomes lower in importance, and the posterior above. The posterior of phase 2 now is higher in importance, because now she receives from Bina. Here he comes and says, who would guess that they would get confused? After the light departs from phase 3, so he says there that phase 4 cannot receive from its upper one, only from the upper one, which is phase 3, since phase 3 now has no more record as far as her own phase, and there's not only the record, they say, the vessel of Malchut returns its face upwards and afterwards downwards. The same goes with 3. 3 now phases 3 downwards in importance, and after 2 above in importance. Why? Because that's where phase 2 illuminates. After phase 2 is also departed, so phase 3 has only 2 as far as the record. She chooses the record of herself. So, again, If phase 3 faces upwards in importance, then phase 2 is lower in importance. And when we talk about after phase 2, when the phases 2 and the phases now phase 1 illuminates, and she faces in Binah down in importance, and then 1 is above in importance. She recedes from phase 1. This again. Now, here too, Parzuf Ab, in Keter there's 4-3, which is her anterior. Her posterior, 3-2. After she refined 4-3, she can receive from what? From 3-2. Therefore, we also learn that he faces downwards in importance and afterwards upwards in importance. What does she now use the keter with? In 3-2. So she gives the 3-2 to the vessel of Chokhmah. Now, that's his explanation here. So the previous question that I asked returns. What we get from here, that the Kli of Keter, after being refined to 3-2, considered 3-2, and then gives it to Chokhmah. If she already extended the light, and this light is already a new phase, it's considered that she's giving to Chokhmah and also illuminates in her vessel, or only gives coarseness, and the vessel of Chokhmah does a coupling. I'm also asking what I asked before.
I don't understand.
In the screen.
It's the descending reflected light. No, it means that after...
I'm not speaking in that form right now. There he gave you a line and understanding for you to understand and know what is being facing downwards and upwards. The reasons are not important to me now. So I know what the matter is. Now I have a different reason. Here we speak of phase 4-3. Phase 4-3 was refined from Kliyat Keter. What remains for her? 3-2. They say 3-2 is not her phase. Therefore, she gives to who? To the vessel of Chokhmah. He comes and he asks, from 4-3, how can she emerge from 4-3 to 3-2? And now he is basing it on 4-3. Answer, also the upper one gives up now 4-3 and takes on 3-2. Why? I need to say it this way. In 4-3, it doesn't have light now, only a record. And he gives here to Chokhmah. Only here he speaks in a different way. Why? Because there we learned that there were no vessels, and he's speaking in a different way. He's speaking about the upper and the lower one. We're starting from Zeranpin to Malchut. The same thing is when I start to talk from Keter, I'm speaking of Keter to Chokhmah. Why do I start talking from Keter? Since there are no changes. So I already have a Kli of Keter, and I'm speaking about Keter. But actually what I want to say is here, the meaning with Keter is a Kli of Keter of direct light of Parzuf Ta'amim. And there, Parzuf Ta'amim gives the name of Malchut. It's the same. Only what's difficult is who gives there, because there was no kliter. So what keter are we connecting here? The keter that has the coarseness of malchut and coarseness root? Only what? The keter of direct light, which illuminates the light of Yechidah, there in the kli keter, is the Parzuf Ta'amim. Here too comes to the Parzuf Ta'amim as well. There were no changes there. The changes were only in the names, since there he's talking from below upwards in Malchut, where Malchut becomes a Kli. But Malchut had it on 10 Sefirot, where he had the main Malchut, there was the light of Nefesh and the level of Keter, and the Parzuf Ta'amim, the level of phase 4, was called Malchut. And the light of Yechidah we would be talking there, and that's the only thing we're talking about here. This is the only Kli we're talking about now. Only what? Then it was not clear there, because now it has a name of what remains from this, but no changes will happen here. However, we must remember, and now he explains it, what the Ari explained above, what's written there, that it has been explained there that when the light departs from the vessel turns its anterior downward and its posterior upward. The anterior of the vessel becomes the posterior, not important, and the posterior becomes the anterior, important. And examine it there. Now to our point. Here, however, the light that belongs to the vessel Keter departed. And he says, because the phase 4 of the male and phase 3 of female have departed, and the coupling was made on phase 3 of the male and phase 2 of the female. There's also a question, with who? Something we should say in Keter, we should say. At that time, the vessel of Keter turns its anterior downward, which is the great coarseness that is in it. Its entire anterior and importance have now become very bad in the Kli of Keter. And the posterior, 4-3, which is called, meaning the refined sign on it, has become the most important on this phase, because now she can extend light, abundance. Now you can see that after the vessel of Keter turned its posterior upward, it equalized with the vessel of Chokhmah. Since the whole disparity of form that was in vessel of Keter is the great coarseness of phase 4 and phase 3 in it. For this is all the merit over the vessel of Chokhmah. And now, all that coarseness has been revoked from it. Why? What is it similar to? From itself, because of the turning of its anterior downward. And thus, it now is considered equalized in form with Chokhmah. It is written, Keter extends the 9 lights to Chokhmah face to face. It implies by this that because of the departure of the light of Keter, the vessel of Keter turned its anterior downward. What's considered important will now be below in importance. Therefore, it stands face to face with the vessel of Chokhmah, since they have equivalence to the anterior now of 3-2, and also in the Kli of Chokhmah, 3-2. Since now the anterior as well